Hi everybody, welcome back. The common thing right now is to say that 2020 has been a real challenge, or it's been a hard year. And I'm not just going to reintroduce that because of this fact that it's trendy and it's true and just to repeat what the noise is already repeating. But what I want to dive into is the fact that this year, with all of its wild ups and downs, mostly downs, but it's just tumult and the chaos and the changes and just like the opportunities and all the things, just all the variety of things that have happened this year, it's caused crisis for everybody in some kind of way, in very different ways, for all different kinds of people. And so even though we feel this kind of collective sense of crisis, we feel this collective sense of stress and tension and confusion and uncertainty, both as a collective community in the human race, but also just on our individual levels, we're feeling so much confusion and fear and nervousness and uncertainty about this new year to come. Like, what the heck is that one going to look like? I really want you to zero in on this word crisis, this idea of crisis, because crisis is typically blown up because as like a much trendier and larger word, because we hear about it so much in larger venues, larger ways, larger societal things. Like we'll hear it in the news, like the political crisis in this country, or the civil crisis in this country, or whatever it might be. So we think of it on these really large scales. We think about it really, really intensely, which makes sometimes, unfortunately, it creates or makes us feel like our stresses and our conflicts and our personal struggles and our personal crises aren't as big of a deal. We belittle ourselves. We downplay what our struggle is because we think that it's just because it's not as big as this like societal level or governmental level crisis that it's not as important or it's not as big of a deal and it shouldn't be talked about or it shouldn't be healed in some kind of way or ameliorated or addressed. And where do we come up with that? I understand, I know just because understand psychology that like we're constantly comparing ourselves. So even with a peer, we're going to think, oh wow, they're dealing with so much more than I am. Why would I think that my crisis is bigger than their crisis? But I want you to take a second, first of all, take a breath and understand that crisis is different for everybody. It's unique to everybody, which means, and I'm going to ask this question multiple times in this video, but which means you get to decide or you get to define what crisis means to you. So think about it. I'm going to challenge you to do this. What is your definition of crisis? And in your life, what is the crisis on whatever magnitude, whatever scale that you have dealt with throughout 2020, leading into 2021? Even if it's not related to the pandemic or politics or civil unrest, like what is the daily crisis that you face, that you uniquely face? Whether you're having trouble with facing it, you don't really know how to face it, or you're handling it, what is your unique experience of crisis? A very easy way to ask it is like, what is causing you the most distress on a daily basis? What's grinding at you? What's scratching at you that's causing you so much discomfort and distress? Because if you're able to recognize that, you're going to be able to free yourself from that pressure of thinking like, oh, my crisis isn't worthy of being considered, or my crisis isn't big enough to be a real crisis. So then you're going to be hard on yourself. No, you get to free yourself of that criticism. As you're defining that for yourself, I also want you to consider the etymology, the root source of the word crisis, because we think of it as such a huge negative event. And it is based in some kind of negativity or some kind of pain or problem or challenge or struggle. However, the etymology, the root of where the word crisis came from, is defined as a decisive turning point in something. I kid you not, its origin comes from, I'll actually read it, a decisive point in progress of a disease. How freaking appropriate is that for this time frame? But other than the fact that it was originally tied with diseases in healthcare, it's like the turning point where either it's recovery or it's death. And then as the word has evolved over the years from that, in general, it's just talking about this is a turning point. A crisis is a turning point where you've hit the edge of the cliff and you have to make a decision one way or another. It's forcing you to make a decision of what you want to do with your life next. What is going to happen next? What do you care about the most that you are going to prioritize? And so think about that for yourself. Once you define what crisis is for you, what it means to you, but also define what your version of crisis is that you are facing currently, think about what is the choice that it's presenting to you? What is the turning point that you are presented with right now? What are your choices? What are your paths? What are the options? This should give you so much clarity and actually decrease the amount of stress if you're able to define and answer these 3 questions. What does crisis mean to you? What crisis are you facing? And what 2 choices are being presented to you? What options are available? It should decrease so much stress and so much pressure because now you actually have this laid out. You have this plan. You have the options. You have more volition in the process of addressing your stress, distress, and crisis. You actually have a choice that you can make. And a lot of people don't think they do. A lot of people think that their problems are not worthy of attention. They're not worthy of being addressed. And so they never think to ask these questions of themselves, nor do they ever recognize that they have the power to choose what they want to do with this crisis, or that they have the power to even do anything about their crisis. So try this for yourself. Feel free to answer this in the comments or reach out to me if you have any kind of trouble answering these questions or if you want support around this or to share it with someone, make it more real. But in the meantime, take care of yourself, focus on yourself, and I'll talk to you soon.